So I'm back with reflections actually on both lessons 3 and 4. Lesson 3, I didn't get a reflections posted last week, partly because I was pretty happy with the lesson and thought people were generally getting it. But we'll make a few comments on it here, and then also add a few more on what I thought was a really good discussion in both forums on lesson 4 on capabilities. So, let's start with lesson 3 in the environment. Um, y'all pretty well got the general notion, right? As the slide shows here, right? The prime objective of industry analysis is first to understand how the structure influences competition, um, but really it's to then do something with it, and that is to assess industry attractiveness and profitability, but even more importantly, to identify the key success factors for the industry and identify potential strategies. Well, reading through the various posts on the airline industry and on the department store industry, I think people were generally on track with what they were trying to do. Um, uh, a good thing was you kept the key success factors at the industry level because that's where they ought to be. These are things that all firms in the industry ought to have to take into account and deal with in one way or another. And you also kept the potential strategies generic. That is, these were things that any firm could try given the key success factors in the industry rather than things that any particular firm should do. All right. So, in that regard, I thought things were all pretty well on track. Liked the comments and the interaction generally. Y'all continue to stay very involved. That's all good stuff to see. So, let's turn to capabilities in lesson 4. Um, When it comes to the measurement of capabilities, I had mixed feelings on that forum. On the one hand, it was interesting. Y'all got involved, had lots of nice things to say. Um, but at some level, you kind of wandered into what generates capabilities, which was fine and interesting, um, but not quite as much on the measuring of the capabilities. Let me point out what I'm trying to say here. All right. The reality of, particularly in the article I wrote quite a while ago, uh, is that managers invest in things that can be measured. When push comes to shove, they want to be able to see something directly on the bottom line. I'm going to put X millions of dollars into something, and I want to know that I'm going to get a return on it. The problem with capabilities uh, is that that link is very difficult to show directly. Um, that is, how do you measure things like culture, like knowledge, like learning? You all pointed out lots of good examples of how these could be valuable, where they might be found. Um, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that, but wrestling still with the notion of how do you measure these is a challenge. I think it was Grace that did try to do some research and found a review article from 2002 that was kind of showing the Scandia model and various others, but not really as much since then. I think it still remains a difficult thing to do. And that's again a challenge then for managers to justify the investments, even if they really believe that this is going to pay off. Um, Several of you did mention that things like goodwill and market to book ratios do provide a broad indicator of the value of capabilities, right? These are, why is the market valuing the company much greater than its book value, the direct value of their more tangible assets. And probably that, in fact, is a result of capabilities and potential the market sees in those generating uh, good things for the firm in the future. The problem with those two indicators is that they don't really allow for direct investment or for accounting for particular capabilities. Um, so uh, it remains kind of a challenge and kind of reiterates, this notion that RBV sometimes can be, or the resource-based view, the focus on capabilities, can sometimes be accused of having a circular logic. That is, if in fact there are issues with measurement of capabilities, then how do you really know, right? The notion being, how do you gain a competitive advantage and earn excess profits? Well, you build on unique capabilities. It's kind of a nice logic. But how do you know a firm has unique capabilities? Well, they have a competitive advantage and are earning excess profits. Well, okay, except that's kind of one leading to the other, leading to the other, and not really getting below the surface. I think it also kind of points out a little bit of a paradox in the resource-based view or the capabilities view, right? That is that to really be able to measure, you need the knowledge or capabilities to be more explicit. I'm not going to be able to remember who had the first post on it, but there was someone who mentioned something about putting a body cam on the best workers and tracking them around and seeing what they were doing and trying to codify what it was they did. And that's great. It'd be great for the company to be able to then share that as part of a training process. But do recognize that the more explicit the capability, the easier it is for someone to copy. Right? That as you turn it from tacit to more explicit, uh, intangible to tangible, you are potentially reducing the value of it. So I think this notion of the difficulty in seeing and measuring also came over a little bit into the various examples uh, of capabilities in use, or examples of strong capabilities, I guess was the official title. All right. Um, this notion is that it's easier to point to the outcome of the capability than to the specific knowledge and behavior that generate it. That is, we can see companies that appear to have these strong capabilities. They have built a big brand. They have done various things that suggest that they have a strong capability. But as you try to peel back the layers to figure out how are they really generating it, it can sometimes become tough because, again, the more you can see it and identify it, the easier it ought to be for someone to copy. As I think I commented to somebody, often we can look at the symptom, the outcome, without really understanding the cause. And I thought one of the posts, Lancey's on Bangor Savings Bank, gave a great example of how insider information can be a big help. Working for the bank, she can really see, what happens inside, how they build the culture, the things they invest in to try to develop it. So, on average, I thought people made good efforts on those things, but in a lot of cases, I think you were wrestling with this, what is this real challenge, all right? That how exactly is it that we generate it can be a difficult thing to see. So, where does that leave us? Well, in kind of an interesting place at this point. We've now looked at performance, we've looked at environment, we've looked at the notion of capabilities. We are jumping this week into actually a particular favorite area of mine, which is organizations. Because to me, one of the ways you peel back the layers and look at how capabilities are generated is by looking at the way they are organized, not only their structure, but their processes and routines. Um, Hopefully you can kind of keep this previous information in mind as you go into this week's uh, material. Again, though, all in all, it's been fun reading the posts. I jump in on some more than others, but it's been fun to see everybody kind of dig down and do more than the minimum requirement and generate some very interesting discussions. I'm learning from them, and I hope you are too.